So now let's talk about the problem-solving strategy. It's really a way of thinking about our process, and it's kind of the beginning of us breaking it down and trying to solve the issues that we're facing. And so what we often do is we take our process output, our y, and we think of it as a function of all of our inputs. Okay, so all of the inputs of the process have some effect on the output. So here's an example of a way we could structure this. So we mentioned how one of our goals could be on-time shipment. That's something we're trying to achieve. So we could say on-time shipment is a function of inventory levels, how much inventory we have on hand, the availability of carriers like UPS and FedEx, the weather, as well as traffic. All of these things could impact on-time shipment. And by structuring this in an equation, we can start brainstorming all the things that could affect our output. And over time, as we go through the DMAC lifecycle, we're thinking about which input should we focus in on. Okay, which ones are going to have should we be tweaking to improve the output or get the output we're seeking? And so we're often adjusting our x's to improve our y, our output. Okay, so let's do an exercise real quick here. Let's try to establish an equation for a rocket launch. Okay, so a rocket launch, a successful rocket launch, is the output we're seeking. What could be some inputs that might affect that? So it could be the weather, obviously. Could be the launch location. Are we launching in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere, or near the equator? What's the weight and height of our rocket? What's the payload? So what are we actually launching into space? Is it a satellite or something else? What's the fuel we're using? Is it a solid rocket motor or a liquid rocket motor? What's the orbit we're going to be putting our spaceship or satellite into? What's the guidance system being used? And how is it being used? And so on. There's plenty of inputs that could affect this output. And as we go through this DMAC lifecycle, if we're trying to improve an output like ensure a successful rocket launch, we think about the inputs that could affect it and which ones we ought to focus in on.